opportunities women encounter during their careers. The Little Rock Regional Chamber is excited to be able to provide a platform for women to share their stories of inspiration, achievement, and success. And in today's session, this is the beginning of our series focused on leaders in STEAM careers throughout our region and how we're helping to fill gender gaps and support women in these fields. During this session, you will hear from three amazing women who are making strides in their respective organizations. Today's session will feature a Q&A session for those attending virtually. You can go into the chat or the Q&A box, send your questions in, and we'll gather those up so that they can be considered in the discussions after the panel. And then for those of you here, there are slips of paper on your table that you can write your questions down, and we'll pick those up and include those also in our Q&A session. Before we get started here, I'd like to take a moment to thank our sponsors who make these events possible. These companies value professional development for women, and we are grateful for their support. So first, we want to thank our series partner sponsors, and that's Insight Engineering, Wright, Lindsay & Jennings, and Southwest Power Pool. Today's attendees have a Cultivate notebook on your table, if you see it there, and it is courtesy of our friends at Baptist Health, and that's so that we can use those to take notes and our thoughts back from this session today. Our series lunch sponsor is Engel Volkers Realty, and our Q&A sponsor is Delta Dental of Arkansas. And last but certainly not least, we want to thank Dassault Falcon Jet for being presenting sponsor. Dassault Falcon Jet recognizes the value of women in the workplace and in STEAM careers. Thank you, Dassault Falcon Jet, for your support today, and thank you to all of our sponsors. In a moment, we're going to hear from our panel, but in the meantime, I'd like to welcome to the stage Nan Vandivort. And Nan is the Senior Human Resources Director for Dassault Falcon Jet. So join me, Nan.
Good afternoon. Dassault Falcon Jet is thrilled to once again be the presenting sponsor for Cultivate, the business series for women. I'm Nan Vandivort, the Senior Director of Human Resources for Dassault Falcon Jet. Over the course of 2021, we discussed many relevant topics, such as navigating power structures, being your own Chief Wellbeing Officer, surviving the workplace pandemic, and we discussed the importance of advocacy and mentorship. These were all important conversations. For 2022, we want to focus on some career paths that are underrepresented for women. We want to be part of the conversation on how we can continue to support and lift women into leadership positions within the STEAM community. At Dassault Falcon Jet, we support these career paths in engineering, technology, avionics, design, and so much more. We believe there are important benefits in having both male and female perspective in leadership roles within the company. And we understand the value of nurturing and building those relationships with our employees and our customers. Now, it is my honor to introduce our moderator for today's panel. Ashley King joined the Fox 16 Good Day Arkansas morning program as co-anchor in July 2018. The San Antonio, Texas native comes to Arkansas from her hometown, where she worked at KABB Fox 29 for 4 years. While there, she was nominated for an Emmy for her work on a documentary highlighting the city's Martin Luther King Jr. March, which is the largest in the country. She also won a National Association of Black Journalists Award for that documentary. Ashley earned her Bachelor of Journalism degree from the University of Texas at Austin. Born in Italy, Ashley spent part of her childhood in Germany, but she has deep-seated roots in Arkansas. Random fun fact, Ashley is related to music icon Michael Jackson. His grandmother and her great-grandfather were first cousins. Also, a big congratulations to Ashley. She recently married her high school sweetheart last month. Please join me in welcoming today's moderator, Ashley King.
Thank you so much for that introduction. This is such a great topic, STEAM. We know that STEAM is very important in our community, in the world, and in having women involved and at the table is definitely important. So I'm excited for this conversation today. But before I introduce our panelists, I want to get to our first Delta Dental poll question of the day. So if you are virtually attending this right now, there will be a link in the chat session so that you can answer there. We want to hear your responses too. So please answer in a yes or no response. Have you ever considered a career in a STEAM field, or if you are already in a STEAM field career? And while you're answering that question, we're going to go ahead and introduce our panelists right now. We want to start first with Ms. Julie Mcallister. She's the president of ECCI. And next to her, we have Susan Altrui. She's the director of the Little Rock Zoo. And then on the end there, we have Ms. Julie Nix. She is the president of Baptist Health Rehabilitation Institute. So let's give these ladies a nice round of applause. All right, so thank you guys for taking the time to join us today. We want to first give you guys each a minute to introduce yourself and let people know who exactly you are. So Julie Mcallister, we'll start with you.
Thank you. My name is Julie Mcallister, and I am the president of ECCI. ECCI is an environmental engineering firm in Little Rock. It's been in Little Rock and it was established about 30 years ago. I've been with the company for about 18. I live in Little Rock, and I have 3 kids.
And Susan?
My name is Susan Altrui, and was born and raised here in Central Arkansas, and I am the director of the wonderful, spectacular Little Rock Zoo, and started there about 15 years ago doing fundraising, marketing, and special events. Then became the assistant director and have been the director there for about 5 years.
And Ms. Julie N.
I'm Julie Nix. I'm the president of the Baptist Health Rehabilitation Institute. I'm also the corporate vice president for Baptist Health for Women and Children Services, Surgical Services, and Rehabilitation Services. Born and raised in Arkansas, married to a wonderful husband. We have a Brady Bunch family. I have 2 daughters, 2 stepdaughters, and 2 stepsons. A little tip I wanted to share, a work-life balance, something that helps me keep my sanity and not be too stressed. I start every day with exercise and prayer every day, and I feel like that is the way that I'm able to start my day physically, mentally, and spiritually prepared, and I think that also helps the end of the day end successfully. A hobby that I have is cooking. I look at cooking almost like an art. You know, you can take all this, just a pile of canned foods or fresh foods, and at the end of your experiment, you've got this beautiful masterpiece. And so those are the things I do to kind of balance work and life. So thank you.
All right. Thank you guys all for being here. So let's go ahead and get down to the discussion that we're all here for. We have our panelists answer some prepared questions, but we also have some questions that come from our virtual audience as well as our in-person audience here. So consider yourself part of this process. So if you do have a question, the virtual audience, you can put that in the Q&A or in the chat session. And then here you have those cards on your table that you can fill out, and we'll come around and get those and ask those questions at the end of the session if we have a little bit of time. Let's see if we have the answer. Do we have the answer yet to our first poll question? I don't think we have that yet, so we'll come back to that in a second. We're going to go ahead and get started with the discussion. All right, so one topic of conversation that I want to start with after hearing all your bios is to discuss the diversity of your careers on this panel itself. So I'd like to hear from each of you about how you chose this or how you landed in this career path. And let's see, Julie Mcallister, we'll start with you since you're the president of an engineering firm. So how did you land in that position?
Well, I started growing up, I loved being outside. I loved being in nature, and so I fell in love with biology. I went to college at UCA and got a degree in environmental science. When I graduated, I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life, so I thought, let's go to more school. So I got my master's degree at UALR in integrated math and science, and When I applied at UALR, I was applying for scholarships as well. I received the Randall Mathis Scholarship from a group called Arkansas Environmental Federation. I went to go receive that award, and at that event, I met my then future boss. He's the previous president at ECCI. He came up to me at that event and said, "You need to work for us." And I thought, okay, I'm looking for a job. So I started out as an intern at ECCI. I did not think that when I was younger, this was not what I imagined I would be doing. But now I can't imagine anything different. Like I said, I started out as an intern. I grew into an environmental scientist, a project manager, and in 2019, I was named the president of the company. So it's a little bit different than the science that I learned in college, but I'm learning something new every day, so I enjoy it.
And Susan, how did you get into your career?
So before I answer that question, I do want to do a quick shout out to the table at the Little Rock Zoo over here, and I want to acknowledge a really special person. My father is here, and David Alturi, I want you to stand up real quick. This is my father, and he came to support me today. And, you know, I think it's really, really important. Our parents are so important to us developing, and they have such an impact on us. And we talk about girls growing and women developing in their careers. And we have an impact on our children, especially when they're young, when they're developing and inspiring them in the STEM and STEAM fields. And they say that young girls have problems with self-confidence, and especially where STEM fields are concerned. And, you know, my father was always encouraging to me growing up. He has had a very distinguished career in aviation. He just retired from that. He spent 20 years at Central Flying Service and then worked for Dillard's Aviation. And I have such great memories of him taking me to see the aircraft and going to air shows with him. So I always knew that I could do whatever I wanted to do as a little girl growing up. And not every girl gets that opportunity to have a father or a mother inspire that in them. And I had that from both of my parents. And it's so important that we inspire that in our children. So I just wanted to acknowledge my father for that, and also acknowledge all the other great ladies that are at this table. I've got Dr. Laura and Dr. Sarah that are here from the zoo, our veterinarian and our conservation coordinator. You know, our zoo has got some fantastic ladies, as well as the chair of our foundation board and the chair, also another member of our board of governors. Adrian is here. Some other members of our committees that volunteer at the zoo are here too. I'm just surrounded by women that inspire me every single day, and it makes my job so much easier. So that's something I just wanted to acknowledge first. So, you know, I never thought that I would work at a zoo. It was really something that, you know, if I was growing up, I never would have said I would work at a zoo one day. And when I was in high school, I was on the debate team. So when we talk about STEAM, I was definitely more of the A part of that, not really part of the other pieces of that acronym. But when I got into graduate school, I was doing speech and doing public speaking and really interested in politics. I went to graduate school at Colorado State University. What brought me back here was to work on Wesley Clark's presidential campaign at the time. I worked in politics for a little while. Then I did government relations to the Arkansas legislature. I wanted to get out of that arena for a little while, work for nonprofits, and saw that there was a position open at the Little Rock Zoo. And it was curious to me. Long story short, I got the opportunity to work at the zoo. So now I joke that I traded one zoo for another. So I often joke with people that we all work in our own zoos. I just work at a literal zoo now. So, but I love it. So I had to learn everything I know about biology, science of animals, all of the things I know about conservation, really from the ground up. And when you're talking about conservation, communicating about conservation, talking to people about why conservation is important and why we need to do things to save our planet and save it for the next generation, you have to understand science and understand how you have to communicate about science to people. So I had to do a lot of self-education. and didn't always know some of that background. So it's been a long path for me, and one that was really an interesting path that I took. So it's one that I love and one that I'm really passionate about now. So that's how I got into this. So it was a little bit by accident, a little bit on purpose, but I'm glad that I'm here now.
All right, and Miss Julie Mix. All right. Well, I have a non-traditional story. Mine's a little different from either of theirs. So I'll kind of put towards the Pulaski County Special School District students that we're honored to have here today with us. When I finished, neither of my parents, actually no one in my family had ever been to college. I was the first person to graduate college. But when I went to college, I didn't have a clue why I was there. I just knew all of a sudden I could do whatever I wanted. My parents weren't there, and I didn't have a curfew anymore. And so I was pretty excited. So I went to school for a couple of years, and then I got a job making almost $6 an hour. And I was like, I'm rich. I don't need to finish college. I don't like college. I'm rich. I got 40 hours a week. So I dropped out of college and literally worked my way up into a couple of different smaller organizations and became a director of marketing at an orthopedic clinic. And a lady, her name was Tina Cackness, she said to me, Julie, you have so much potential, but you're never going to get any further than you are now without a degree. You've got to go back. So at the time, I was a single mom. I had two small girls, a 1-year-old and a 3-year-old, and I decided I was going back to get my degree. I worked full-time, and I took 3 to 6 hours a semester for years. I finished that in 2013. I immediately applied to, and the whole time you're working full-time, I applied to a graduate program at the University of Alabama at Birmingham. It was an executive program where you spent the first, basically 70 days you spent there on that campus and then back and forth, and then ended with a Keystone project in Italy. The whole time I still have. Now I'm married, and I have help with my 2 kids. But anyway, I share all that to tell you it was 2016 when I finally finished my degree. And throughout all that time, Baptist believed in me and supported me, and I started as a program line manager for orthopedics and then moved into general surgery, and then I've told you all I'm doing now, and I really am appreciative. We've got some of our board members here from Baptist, and I just feel truly blessed, and I hope somebody will be inspired if you've gotten off track anywhere, just to know that you can get back on track and you can do anything you want to do.
Good to know you don't always have to take that traditional route to get to where you're going. So, Julie, next I'm going to start with you first. Do you believe different business sectors have greater gender diversity / women in leadership, and why do you think that's so?
I do. I do think that there's definitely a difference in different business sectors that have a lot of women and versus that don't. I gave a lot of thought to that, and I think one of the biggest parts is I believe there are certain business sectors that have really been forward-thinking and really engaged in innovative technologies early on to attract people into their work field. First of all, you've got to attract a woman to want to work for you if you ever think you're going to get her into leadership. And some of the things, when I look into healthcare administration specifically, because that's the world I live in primarily, we tend to still do things in a very traditional type way. Whereas if you compare that to like a Google or an Apple or even Walmart, Procter & Gamble, and looking at how they are promoting women, but also looking at flexibility, work-life balance. Women in particular typically are the ones that have a phone call in the middle of the day and somebody's got to go pick Susie up from school. And, to have that flexibility to be able to do that, I think it's the flexibility and really forward thinking is what will attract more women into leadership positions.
All right, so we're going to go back to that first poll question that we have. Have you ever considered a career in a STEAM field, or if you're already in a STEAM field? We're going to, for the audience here, we'll have you guys raise your hand. Have you ever considered a career in STEAM field, or are you currently in the STEAM field? Okay. So online we had about 20% who said yes. So our second Delta Dental poll question for you guys, and again, we'll have you raise your hand. Do you believe you have a seat at the table in your current organization? You can raise your hand if you believe so. Okay. I guess a little bit about half. So if you're online, you can answer that question yes or no right now, and we'll have your answers in just a little bit. So now, Susan, we're going to move on with our panel question. So, Susan, in our pre-panel discussion, you made an interesting comment about how zoo careers were predominantly male at one point in time, and now they seem to be turning a corner and have more females entering into these career paths. What factors do you believe have played into that shift change?
You know, it's interesting. We have a management meeting. It's our animal management meeting. It's all the supervisors and managers that are in our animal division, which is the largest division at the zoo. And it's all female. There's about 10 of us, except for one brave man who is the over our primate area. And it's very interesting because once upon a time, you would have seen a lot more men in animal management than you would have women. And I think a lot of that is because of the evolution, really, that zoos have taken, too. When we thought about zoos, it was really about keeping animals, and we didn't really think much else about it. It was about animals were to be looked at, and we really didn't think much about why we were keeping animals. And now zoos have really evolved into these organizations where we are doing a lot with animals in terms of conservation, research, and the higher purpose, which is a really great purpose of doing conservation in the wild. And so now we're attracting a group of individuals that are doing it for ethical reasons and a moral purpose and compass. And so I think when you're talking about women especially, a lot of women are attracted to professions because of those moral compasses. We want to do good in the world. And so I think the zoo profession and the aquarium profession especially is attracting a lot more women because we want to do good in the world. We want to work for nonprofits. We want to work for things where we're making an impact in the world. And that's the impact that zoos make every single day. We're reaching children and reaching people and educating people about conservation and about what we have to do to change people's minds about saving animals in the wild and saving animals here locally so that we're making that impact to save animals globally and save our planet. That's the kind of thing that we weren't doing 50 years ago, quite frankly. And so I think just the evolution of how we've thought about the way we take care of animals, the way that the profession has grown has really changed that. But two, I think also just the very nature of the industry itself has grown. So one thing that hasn't changed, though, is the very, very top leadership positions are still very male-dominated. The Association of Zoos and Aquariums, which is our accrediting organization, we've got about 240 zoos and aquariums nationwide, which the Little Rock Zoo is one of, and there are about 25 that are run by females. The rest are still run by men. So there's still a very small percentage that are female run. So when you get up to the very top levels, and I think this is true for most industries, that the leadership positions are still very male-dominated. So we still have a lot of work to do. And we also still need a lot more minority representation. And this goes for every industry, not just the zoo industry. But I think this is also true in the STEM and STEAM fields, that we do see a large underrepresentation of minority women in these fields. And so that's something we've got to work on, and we've got to be intentional about it. And in the zoo and aquarium field, it's something that we have recognized that we need to be very intentional about and understand that we've got to break down barriers, understand why we've got those barriers, and do more to encourage that and encourage more participation and have more diversity.
Perfect. Great answer there. And Julie M., at ECCI, what is the ratio of male to female engineers, and have you seen a change over a period of time to believe that more women are accepted into this career path now?
At ECCI, our ratio is about 50-50 of women to men, and that is very rare. Luckily, the previous president and owner of ECCI, he really was proud to hire women from the very beginning. He's always made a huge point to seek out to hire women. And even at trade shows, he would go to other engineering firms and say, you don't have enough women working for you. Look at the brain power I have working for me. And he just always made you feel so proud to be a woman working for his firm. I don't think that is found everywhere. I think that or the other engineering firms that we come across, it is definitely not a 50-50 situation, so we're really lucky there. In my industry, I am seeing the generation above me, which is predominantly men, they are phasing out. And I am seeing more and more young women taking these positions and moving up from, like you were saying, into the higher positions. And so I'm really proud of that. In our industry, we deal with the engineers, but we also deal with the construction sites and things like that. I've seen my first electrician that was a female, so I was really proud to see that. And then I know that there's been a highlight of Entergy having a female line woman. So I'm definitely seeing more incorporation of women into this field, which makes me really proud.
Even that linemen, that's the name of the position.
What do I say right there?
I think we have to even change our mindset when we think of the title of those positions as well to include women. So, Julian, as a leader in your industry, how have you stayed mindful of who's at the table and who's missing, and how do you feel men can continue to support other women within their organizations?
So everybody remember that's a two-part question. So, part one. As far as being mindful of who's at the table and who's missing, I shared with you my leadership journey. It's, a good 15, 17, 18 years to finally make it to the table at Baptist. So I'm certainly well aware when I'm at a table at who's there, who's not there, but not just from a gender standpoint, but from a talent standpoint. Do we have the right people there? With all that being said, even with finally making it to the executive table, I'm not at the big table still. I've got one table left to go, the C-suite table. So I hope to be someday. To tag on to what you were saying earlier, Baptist has done an amazing job of diversifying over the past several years, especially under our current CEO, has been very deliberate in bringing in talented female executives. I do think as the zoo and other industries, when you get to the very senior level in healthcare specifically, and it's still pretty male dominated, and it's just I think that's a culture that we are changing. And then in terms of how men can continue to support women in their current organizations, I think one thing is just to be empathetic to what it is like to be a female or a woman executive trying to work your way up, because it's something that no offense to the few men we have in the room, but they haven't had to have that hyper self-awareness because everybody else in the room or at the table looks just like them. And so I think being aware of that is good. And then I wanted to quote an article that I read from the Center for Creative Leadership in terms of women and leadership roles. It says the key is to create an environment where women leaders feel the psychological safety to speak out and have the backing of an organization committed to driving widespread culture change. And I think that's where our organization at Baptist is getting to, and I hope that more and more organizations will get there because it is a complete culture change and mindset. So that's the advice I would give. Take back to all your men at work.
Perfect. All right, so we're going to go to the answer from that's Delta Dental poll question we had. Do you believe that you have a seat at the table in your current organization? And it's probably about 50-50 split. So some people believe they do, some people believe they don't. Throughout y'all's career, have you guys felt like y'all have always had a seat at the table, or did you have to kind of work your way up to feeling that way?
Well, I'll answer first, and I will say I was very fortunate at the Little Rock Zoo. The former director, Mike Blakely, was a great leader and taught me what I know about being a leader in the zoo industry. And he was a wonderful individual in terms of giving me a seat at the table. And I don't think that a lot of women always get that opportunity. And one of the things that he allowed me to do was to learn a lot of different facets of what it means to be a zoo director. I didn't know much about finance, and he gave me access to the city of Little Rock's finance director, Sarah Linehan, so that she could teach me how to read spreadsheets, how to understand the city's finances, how the city finance works, because the Little Rock Zoo is under the city of Little Rock, so you have to understand that structure. So those were things that he allowed me to do so that I would be able to become the professional that I am today and to take on more responsibility. He allowed that growth to happen so I could take on more and more challenges and grow as a professional. And he allowed me to do professional development opportunities, take on more and more trainings that I wanted to do, and travel to places to take those trainings. And he never denied me those opportunities. So that's something that whenever I get an opportunity to say, I'm always grateful to him for that. So if you're those of you that are the men in the room, if you have young women or even whatever age woman that is looking at those opportunities, give them those opportunities. That's a really important thing in their career growth, or any of you in this room. Give people those opportunities. That's important to their professional growth and their development.
I have a similar situation. Stan Jorgensen, my boss, he always gave opportunity for learning. He wanted to teach me what I needed to know to be at the table. And he would send me at training as well, or off to training as well, if anything that I had questions on, financial aspects as well for running a company, if there was a new direction or thought that I thought ECCI should be going, he was always open to listen to that, and maybe they were silly, and he would explain to me why, but he always gave me opportunity to learn, and he would try to take the time to teach me and help me get to the point where I deserved to have a seat at the table, to know what I needed to know.
Yeah, I would echo some of that. I think I'd be remiss not to say a thank you to, I've had wonderful bosses, and although I didn't have a seat at the table, Greg Crane, Doug Weeks, they always made my opinions were valuable. They would sit at the table maybe for me, but they always valued and always made me feel like I was such an important part of the team, even though I wasn't at the table. And then throughout these years, with various opportunities, when you find yourself you're at this table now, and now you're at this table, because we've got multiple levels of leadership, and so. Again, I don't know that I've never haven't always had a seat at the table, but I've always felt like I was an important part of the team, and it feels really great having a seat at the table now.
All right. Well, we're going to move on now to our last actual Delta Dental polling question. So again, answering yes or no on the virtual attendees. You can answer this saying, have you ever been so discouraged in your current career that you wanted to quit? And I'll get y'all's answers here in the room in just a little bit. So some laughs, I know. All right, so I'd love to spend some time now talking about the importance of not just building relationships with your fellow coworkers and employees, but also nurturing those relationships, and how advocating and mentoring the younger generation can help boost STEAM careers and the culture surrounding them. So what are some ways that your organization support bringing more women into STEAM careers, and what have you seen as significant barriers to having more women leadership in those fields? So we can start with Julie? No? No? Okay. So the question is, what are some ways that your organization supports bringing more women into STEAM careers, and what have you seen as significant barriers to having more female leadership in these fields?
Okay, so one thing that our organization does is we bring in MSHA, Master of Science in Health Administration, residents and fellows. Whether they're last year of the MSHA program, and then we'll keep them on a second year. We will pair them up with one of either myself or another executive, and just let them work like for a year or sometimes 2 years and see where is going to be a good fit. And then that we typically try to hire those people into new administrative type roles as we start building that bench strength. So that's some of the things that's the thing that comes to mind as something that we really do. And there's a conscious effort to specifically look for some females in those roles as we are trying to balance out our diversification of the team.
Have to be intentional with things that you do. Exactly. Susan, what about you?
So I think that starting young is very key. At the Little Rock Zoo, we have a Zoofari program that we do in the summer, which is a summer camp, and we see a lot of children in that program. And, children is really where we have to concentrate, I think, with inspiring leadership at a very young age and inspiring that desire to want to learn about STEM. And I say STEM because that A has kind of snuck in there a little bit, and I feel like we do kind of a good job with the arts and such with girls, but we don't always do such a good job with science and math and technology. So at the zoo, we're really trying to inspire that with really young girls and kids of all ages, and doing some things right now with some elementary schools. We have a FarmBot program. Where the FarmBot is something where the kids can code the FarmBot to grow food for animals. And so it seems like any time you bring an animal into the room or you involve animals, it encourages children to want to do something with science and technology. So if we can find a way to bridge the gap between those two things, we can bring technology in the room and bring the animals in the room. Those are the kinds of things that we're trying to do to encourage that in children. So we look for opportunities like that at the Little Rock Zoo. Some of the barriers that I see out there when people get older, and more specifically our internship program. Data is key. So the Association of Zoos and Aquariums has been doing some surveys on what might be causing some barriers to why we're not seeing more diversity in our internship programs. And we found out one of the reasons why is because a lot of our internship programs were not paid. So a lot of the zoos and aquariums around the country are now starting to offer paid internship programs, and our zoo foundation is now providing a stipend so that we can pay our interns that are coming to us each summer. Interns at zoos and aquariums are actually very competitive programs to get into. But we found that a lot of individuals from diverse backgrounds were not applying for those programs because it's hard to move to a different state, go there for the summer, and to do it for free. Not everyone has money from a family where they can do that. And so paying for that internship program makes a big difference. So, those are some of the things. We need to start digging into the reasons why there's not access for everyone and what those barriers are, and then try to create the solutions to those problems. So that's just one example of where we're starting to do some of those things to create some more access. And with our Zoofari Camp program, too, we're also offering scholarships thanks to McClarty Automotive so that we're increasing some access there, too. So we're doing what we can to increase access where we can to increase diversity and to do some more things there as well.
At ECCI, we try to be very intentional with our hires and with our interns. We do try to hire and seek out women. My board even commented on my last two hires were men, and I had to explain to them I just couldn't find any women to apply. So that is a struggle in my field, and I know finding workers all around is difficult right now. But unfortunately, I didn't have any young female engineers looking for a job when I was looking to hire. But we try to be intentional with our hires and with our interns, and we definitely try to be very specific with who we partner our new young female workers with a good leader in the company to make sure that we're teaching them the right things to grow how they need to, and also training outside of the office as well, not just specific job training, but leadership training. If there's something that I can see that a female is not, or an employee in general is not feeling confident, we'll try to find some sort of training that she can do to build her confidence, or even just beyond on the job training.
And Julie, Nix, in your career, you deal with some residency students. So what are some ways that you mentor or advise those students on where they are currently, where they want to go in their careers, and do you discuss gender equality with those students?
Well, what's interesting is in the past several years, probably 4 or 5 years, they will bring up the gender equality right away. And one of the things that I tell them is what you need to focus on in your career is being the best you. Don't compare yourself to everybody else, and especially early on, don't get caught up in some of the, well, they're always going to give it to the men. They're always going to give it to the men. Instead of focusing on that, just focus on being the best that you can be. And then when you're up for a promotion, it's fine to ask for it. But the biggest thing I tell them is not to get so caught up. It's almost turns into some drama between, with young female executives specifically, and the concern that a male is going to make more than them or gets a promotion first, and to not focus on that, but instead focus on doing the best job you can. And most time, your hard work will be recognized and you'll be rewarded and promoted based on that. But if you go around talking about yourself, bragging about yourself, and fussing because somebody else got a promotion before you did, it could be career ending. So most of the people I mentor and work with are young. They're MSHA students, and that is some of the biggest advice I give them in terms of the gender inequality, and just don't get too wrapped up in it. Focus on being the best you.
Definitely can get caught up in that stuff. I know I have done that in my own career as well. And Julie M., at ECCI, what are some of the practices that have been put in place to bring a culture of work-life balance to your engineers, both male and female?
Well, I am a parent, so I know the hardship it is to rush to work at a certain time, leave at a certain time. I know that kids and families, they take priority, and so we have a very flexible schedule for anyone. We have one mother who, this is the schedule she chose, but she comes in at 5:30 in the morning and leaves at 3:30, and that's what she wants to do so she can leave to pick her kids up and take them to their school activities and things like that. But we have a very flexible schedule. We offer a gym membership to all of our employees, which they really enjoy. They get a lot of their frustration and energy out in the gym, and a lot of us work out together, and it's great camaraderie. We allow pets at the office, and that's always really calming and uplifting to have people's dogs run around the office and, just visit. We've always had a really great culture that supports families. You'll see oftentimes kids in the afternoon, after they are picked up from school. We just try to let people know that we support you as an individual. I am of the mindset, if we take care of our employees, they're going to want to take care of the company. And it has seemed to work out. People seem to like that culture, and we try to do things together as an ECCI family and bring in their actual families, and we have lunches and dinners together. And I know it's very cliche, but we really try to treat our employees as a family member, and I think that's worked out well.
Yeah, that definitely helps. I mean, you do feel like you're part of it as a family. So we're going to go back to that polling question. I want you guys to raise your hands here. Have you ever been so discouraged in your current career that you wanted to quit? I'll raise my hand as well. What about you guys? You can raise your hands as well if y'all.
Well, I don't think you're being honest if you're not raising your hand in this room. I think everybody feels that way at some point,
So 95% of people online attending right now also said that they have felt like quitting as well. So I think we're all in agreement there.
I mean, I work for the city of Little Rock, so I mean, it's just kidding. No.
So okay, we're going to go ahead and get to our some questions from the audience here. These questions are sponsored by Delta Dental of Arkansas. So what would you recommend when you asked for a seat at the table and were told no? How do you navigate no? I don't know which one of you guys want to take that question first. Think about it for a second.
I think, I'll just put it into in my current job, if you were to ask, I think it'd be a little weird to go ask for a seat at the table rather than be offered a seat at the table. But it's okay if you do go ask for a seat at the table and you're told no. I think you need to be very, very open to the explanation as to why. I think you need to ask why, help me understand, or maybe it's, my goal is to have a seat at the table. What is it that you see that I need to do to improve, or are there certain goals or things I need to set? How do you get a seat at the table? So maybe you need to ask how, what does your organization look for what does success look like that would allow you to have a seat at the table rather than just asking for the seat at the table?
You know, there's lots of different tables in our lives that we're trying to get seats at, I think, too. You know, it's not just the next, but the C-level suite, as she called it, where the executive suite is, but there's a seat at the table of where other decisions in our lives are made that also affect our organization. You know, for the Little Rock Zoo, we're raising money for the zoo for new exhibits, for new habitats, and so there's the seat at the table of who's making the decisions to give money to the zoo. There's the seat at the table for who's going to make the decision of what's going to be in a bond package that affects the zoo. There's the seat at the table of what decisions are going to be made at a lot of other tables, too, that affect the zoo. So, you know, we're constantly thinking about how to get seats at those tables. And whatever profession it may be, I think we're always thinking about how to get seats at those tables. So it's developing relationships and managing those relationships. And I think a lot of it comes down to how you manage those relationships and what's involved in that.
Along those same lines, maybe it's not a seat at the table, but maybe you're not feeling represented or heard. And I think just, as they said, communication and asking why and opening that door to why am I not being heard. And I think if you feel like you cannot have that communication or you feel like you're not getting that representation, maybe that's not the right place for you. And but you have to be very open, like Julie said, to the honest truth. Maybe you're not ready yet, but you just need to have that conversation first.
All right, and this next question, it says, for Julie, I'm not sure which one, so both of you can answer. What experience did you gain that helped propel you to your current leadership position? I think you kind of mentioned some of your experience that you gained to help you get to your leadership position.
I've done multiple training courses. Like I said, my boss was always very interested in training. Probably every year I would go to a different type of leadership training. There's great ones around the state and all over the country, virtual or not. Training, I think, is key. Having an open mind and figuring out where your weaknesses are. You should be able to look at yourself and see where your growth needs to be. But I would just say just experience throughout the multiple years I was there and partnering with people in the company and seeing where my growth needed to happen.
For me, it was understanding business finance. There was really just kind of this veil that was lifted when I understood how the financial operation of the zoo in the city of Little Rock worked. That was the most important thing for me.
And before we finish our conversation, we're running out of time here, so I do want to ask you guys each this one last question. You have about a minute to answer it. So what one piece of advice would you give to the next generation of female leaders, like the students here, who we have from the Pulaski County Special School District? And Julie? Either Julie?
My advice is to be brave and don't have confidence in yourself. It's very difficult to have confidence, but it's okay to fail as long as you're learning from that mistake. But bravery is definitely key.
Again, just what she said, I second that. Don't be afraid to make mistakes, and don't be afraid to make good grades either. Study hard and do well in class.
And I would just say, be your best self. Give 100% every day, and I'll go back to the thing I say. The way I start my day every day, exercise and prayer, it sets the day up. It ends the day the right way, and that would be the piece of advice I would leave you with.
All right. Well, thank you guys so much for giving all this great advice. If you could give them a round of applause for giving their time today. Well, thank you guys for letting me lead this discussion today. I hope everybody here gained something from it. I hope you guys can take this on in your careers and hopefully get that seat at the table. And now please join me in welcoming to the stage Jay Chester, the President and CEO of the Little Rock Regional Chamber.
Thank you, and what a day. You know, Jim started it with what a beautiful day. Having had this conversation and learned from these four, not just three, four amazing women, it just made the day even brighter. And, you know, we were talking about STEAM and talking about careers and talking about linemen, and it reminded me of the Glenn Campbell Classic. That's hard to say really fast. Wichita lineman. And for those of you that are The Voice fans, if you've not seen Wichita lineman, beautifully sung by Glenn Campbell, sung better by a girl named Becca and a band called A Girl Named Tom, please look that up. It'll bring tears to your eyes. So that was just the A part of the STEAM. So I had to work that in too, Susan. So thank you again for everyone being here today. We really appreciate it. We really appreciate Julie Mcallister, Susan Altruy, Julie Nix, and Ashley King for bringing this wonderful program to us. So let's give them another big round of applause. We're so amazed and blessed and pleased to be back in person. What a wonderful opportunity it is to get back together and to learn from each other, and to have examples for our young folks and let them see what success looks like. As we've always talked about, it's hard to be what you can't see, and you can see a lot of success right here. So young ladies, please remember that when you're looking for advice. Lots of people in this room are available, and we appreciate the fact that you came and joined us as well. We want to give another big round of applause to our presenting sponsor, DeSoto Falcon Jet, as well as our Q&A sponsor, Delta Dental, our series lunch sponsor, Engel and Volkers Realty, Baptist Health for their Cultivate notebooks, take good notes in those, and our series partner sponsors, Insight Engineering, Wright Lindsay Jennings, and Southwest Power Pool. Let's give them all another big round of applause. So we're entering the second quarter of the year. Isn't that hard to imagine? 2022, we're already through the first 3 years, or 3 months, that for some of us felt like 3 years. We're entering into the next 3 months of this year, and we're excited to have a number of other opportunities for you guys to come and join with us in celebrating being together and networking and learning. We have a business after hours al fresco, which is going to be held April the 21st from 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. at the brand new headquarters of Arkansas Federal Credit Union. Please join us there. We have a number of these events, as you heard when we began, throughout the remainder of the year. If you have any great ideas for us to consider, let me rephrase that, for Stacy Wilson, who does a phenomenal job running our programs and a lot of our revenue activities at the Little Rock Chamber of Commerce, who happens to be sitting in the back and who, oh, by the way, has a birthday today. Let's thank Stacy for all the work that she does. Also, our finalists of the Small Business Impact Awards are being announced now and over the next few weeks, and we will be celebrating that event at a luncheon on May the 5th. Tickets are available from any of the folks that you see here in the room with our team, or you can reach out and go to the World Wide Web and find that yourself. Our next Power Up session will be right here at the Clinton Library on April 27th, where we will be discussing the topic of cannabis regulations and an employer's response and how we're all going to obviously make that work for everyone. Thank you again for coming today and for the opportunity to learn from these four amazing women. Have a wonderful day.